Welcome back, everyone. Today we are honoring Dave Holli, this year's recipient of the Carl V. Pellonpaa Lifetime Achievement Award. It's been wonderful learning more about Holli Forest products, kind of where it started, what it looks like today. And you mentioned a little bit about some of your international travels, but I know that was a big part of how you grew the industry here in the Upper Peninsula. So I guess I'm kind of curious as to how the role that played. Where you said you'd go anywhere where trees are, so it must have taken you around the world.
Yes, I've had the opportunity to look at quite a few places, but relative here to the Upper Michigan, I saw that first swallow log processing in Finland, 1987. And I kept thinking about it and saying, we can do that up here, we can do that in the U.S., we can do it in Upper Michigan. And as the time goes by, in the meantime, then I've been back to Finland many times, and Sweden, to Norway, and my friends up in Quebec, and so, but it was just starting to grow at the time. And when I started talking about small log processing and the number of logs we had to process, most of the people in my own forest industry I talked to, they said, that can't work, doesn't work. I said, there's nothing experimental, it works. So that was the really start of my interest in 1987, but we didn't get to build a mill till almost 9 years later.
Wow.
Why was it important to you to bring those type of industrial practices back home from Europe?
Because that's the size of a lot of the softwood trees we have that were normally just going to the pulp mill, which is good resources, but they were logs that could be processed into 2x4s and various types of lumber. So our forest in size class was very similar to what we were seeing in Finland. They passed their Forest Practices Act, I think 1913, 1914. So genetically, they had done a lot of work with their plantations. So their trees, I always tell them, yeah, you know, your trees are like trying to process telephone poles. Our trees have a few branches on them.
So why do you think these countries, were able to do as much as they were able to do? The forest industry was more important to their economy?
Well, yeah, it's a much larger part of their gross domestic product, and so it's just as, it's, the U.S. is a big country, we've got a huge economy, and so our forest industry isn't near the size of the U.S. like it is in the Scandinavian countries.
And you mentioned, people said it couldn't be done here. Did you face a lot of resistance throughout your career, and how did you handle that?
I guess it wasn't a lot of resistance if you kind of ignore it. When they're telling me it didn't work, I knew it worked.
Yeah.
So all we had to do was prove it.
Yeah.
Which we did with Sawyer lumber.
Did that become a competitive problem? You mentioned it a little, but the resource itself, getting the...
Well, early on, we only harvest about 1/3 of our resource in our growth in Upper Michigan, 35%. And so the base of the resource isn't the issue, but when you all of a sudden bring in a large user, like we were buying 400,000 cords a year, so we were buying about half the wood the big paper mills were buying. So it was a challenge early on. And then we also wanted to change the length. They were buying all 8 foot. We wanted to buy 9 foot. So to help the value, if you have to cut and make the 2x4 shorter, we wanted to keep them all 92 5/8 inches longer to protect the price. So if you have an 8 foot cutback over a foot, the price goes way down. If you have a 9 foot cutback, you still have an 8 foot stud. So that was kind of a challenge, getting the loggers to cut 9 foot. There was a lot of resistance at first, but I just kept telling them, look, I said, every piece you process, you got 12% more volume.
I think Elizabeth and Tia's eyes just kind of glazed over with that 8 and 9 foot.
What I love the most about it is you were just firm on what you believed.
You spent 9 years from visiting Finland, having this idea of wanting to take their industrial practices, bring it back to the UP. 9 years to make that dream into a reality. What did that process look like? Was it a lot of trial and error? You said you just had to prove that you could do it. Were you just working on proof in that time?
Well, no, it really wasn't a trial and error. It was a matter of selecting the machinery that we felt would best process our trees. And so there was, and quite a bit of work was done up in Quebec, Canada. They were kind of the leaders in North America with small log processing at the time. So pretty much in the process, there's a company called Husa, a Finnish company, and they had sold quite a few machines in North America. So we went out to visit them, see how they're running. And then there was quite a few other brands also. So we turned to look that out, and then we had an engineer we hired from Montreal we sat down and we took and designed the mill to wheat field process the trees were growing. Now, of course, the technology is changing very fast. I mean, when we first put in the first line, I mean, within about 3 years, the line was getting a little bit obsolete, part of the line. And of course, but then you have all those financial considerations. It isn't like you're going to go out and just buy a car.
Yeah.
You want to put in a new line, it's pretty high priced.
Sure. Well, you know, a big piece of this award, as Don mentioned, isn't just about Holli Forest
Yeah.
products. It's about the work that you've done in the community. We're going to take another break, and when we come back, we're going to talk about some of the big impacts you've made in Western Marquette County, specifically regarding some of the ski infrastructure there. We'll be right back.